It was early morning at the Johnson household, and the soft rays of the sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. Kayla stood in front of her bed, her heart racing with excitement as she carefully packed her suitcase. On the bed beside her lay her textbooks, neatly stacked, ready to accompany her on the journey ahead. Her hands moved quickly, folding clothes and double-checking her list of things to take, but her mind was filled with swirling thoughts of the new life she was about to begin. Lena, her mother, stood behind her, observing her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. She noticed how Kayla's hands trembled ever so slightly as she packed, the nervous energy unmistakable. "Are you ready, darling?" Lena asked, her voice steady but filled with unspoken worry. Kayla turned and gave her mother a bright smile, though it was tinged with unease. "I'm ready, Mom. There will be so many opportunities waiting for me." Lena nodded, her eyes lingering on her daughter. She knew this was a big step. "Remember, your father and I are so proud of you. Just stay focused on your dreams and, most importantly, be careful, especially with the other girls." Kayla's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "I'll be careful, I promise." With that, Lena helped her daughter finish packing, silently praying that the journey ahead would be one of growth and self-discovery. The door to the future was now wide open for Kayla, and though her mother's heart ached, she knew her daughter was ready to face it. The car rolled steadily down the bustling streets of Atlanta, the hum of the engine blending with the occasional sounds of city life. Horns, footsteps, and the distant chatter of pedestrians. Kayla sat in the back seat, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. The tall buildings, the busy streets, and the flashes of color from storefronts outside all seemed to blur together in her mind. She wasn't paying attention to the world around her. Instead, her thoughts were consumed with the excitement and nervousness that swirled inside her. She thought about the university she was about to enter, the prestigious halls, the new faces she would meet. It was everything she had dreamed of. Her heart pounded as she imagined the possibilities, the opportunities to grow, to learn, to become someone more than she had ever been. New friends, new experiences, a new chapter. It was what she had always hoped for, what she had worked so hard for. She couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement as the reality of it all settled in. But then she turned her head and caught the concerned gaze of her father, Tyrone, from the front seat. His brow was furrowed, his eyes searching hers, as though trying to read the emotions she hadn't fully expressed. He broke the silence, his voice low but heavy with concern. "Are you sure you're ready, Kayla? You know how tough it can be out there. The world is not always kind." Kayla looked at him, her confidence rising as she met his worried eyes. She knew her father cared, but she had made up her mind. "I'm ready, Dad," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos of emotions inside her. "This is for my future." Her father didn't respond immediately, but he gave a slow nod, still unsure, though proud of her determination. They continued on their way, the city of Atlanta slowly fading behind them, as Kayla's mind shifted back to the bright future ahead. Kayla stepped out of the car, her legs slightly trembling as she planted her feet on the ground. The air felt different here, heavier with the weight of anticipation and the unknown. Her heart raced, a mix of excitement and nervousness flooding her senses. She stood for a moment, taking in the view before her. An imposing, grand building with its towering structure, surrounded by manicured lawns and perfectly lined pathways. It was everything she had imagined, and more, but it also felt surreal, as though she was standing on the threshold of something vast and daunting. Her parents were close behind her, their footsteps softer, slower, as if they too were feeling the gravity of the moment. Lena's hand rested gently on Kayla's shoulder, her touch a comforting anchor in the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her daughter. Lena looked at her, her expression both proud and worried. She had always hoped for this moment, but now As it was happening, there was a part of her that wasn't ready to let go. "Remember what we've taught you," Lena said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the words themselves held weight too heavy for the open air. "Listen to your heart, but be wise in what you do." Kayla nodded, her throat tightening. The truth in her mother's words was undeniable, but in that moment, she wanted nothing more than to dive headfirst into the adventure that awaited her. Tyrone stood beside them, his tall frame casting a shadow over Kayla as he reached out to pull her into a tight hug. His embrace was firm and reassuring, a silent message of support and pride. "You're the pride of our family," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Make us proud, Kayla." Kayla didn't speak, but she nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. As they parted, her gaze shifted toward the open gates of the campus, and she noticed a group of older students walking by. One of them, a senior girl, caught her eye and flashed her a quick wink. It was Tasha, a confident, striking figure who seemed to radiate an effortless charm. She smiled and nodded at Kayla, a silent invitation to join the world of the upperclassmen. Kayla couldn't help but feel a mix of intrigue and hesitation as she watched Tasha disappear into the crowd. Her heart fluttered with the possibility of new friendships, but her mind lingered on the advice her parents had just given her. Would she be able to navigate this new world while staying true to herself? The dormitory room felt small, its plain walls and mismatched furniture giving it a stark, utilitarian feel. Kayla stood in the middle, her suitcase still unzipped on the floor as she surveyed the room. The faint smell of cleaning supplies lingered in the air, and the hum of distant voices and footsteps outside the door signaled the activity of the bustling campus. It was a new beginning, but it felt unfamiliar, almost overwhelming. Before she could fully process everything, the door opened, and in walked her new roommate. Deja, with her warm smile and easy confidence, stepped inside like she had lived here for years. She had a way of carrying herself that made the room seem more alive, her presence filling the space with an energy that was both calming and unsettling at the same time. "Welcome to the dorm," Deja said with a broad grin. Her voice was upbeat, almost rehearsed, as if she had greeted countless new roommates before. She moved effortlessly around the room, unpacking her own belongings with quick, practiced movements. "Don't worry, it's not as scary as people make it sound. I'll help you settle in. You'll be just fine." Kayla watched her, feeling a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She had expected to feel more nervous, more alone, but Deja's ease seemed to put her at least partially at ease. As they worked together to unpack, Deja kept chatting, her voice light and friendly, but there was something in her eyes that Kayla couldn't quite place. Something sharp, something hidden behind the smile. After a while, as they finished arranging the last few things, Deja turned to Kayla with a soft laugh. She leaned in just slightly, her eyes glinting with mischief. "We're not just going to be roommates," she said quietly, almost as if sharing a secret. "We're going to be like sisters." Kayla, still unsure of what to make of this new dynamic, nodded cautiously, but Deja's smile widened. There was a quiet intensity behind her words, a promise of something deeper, more binding. Kayla hesitated for a moment, then forced a small smile in return. She wanted to fit in, wanted to feel like she belonged. Deja's eyes lingered on hers for a second longer, and Kayla could almost hear the unspoken question hanging in the air. "You want to be one of us, don't you?" Kayla's stomach fluttered, but she didn't say anything. She simply nodded, not fully understanding the weight of what she was agreeing to. As Deja returned to her unpacking, Kayla felt the first inkling of doubt creeping into her mind. She had come here to find herself, to grow. But what exactly was she stepping into? The evening settled over the dormitory, the warm glow from the desk lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. Kayla and Deja sat together on the bed, their surroundings now feeling somewhat more familiar. The hum of the campus outside drifted into the room, muffled and distant, as the two roommates chatted quietly about their day. Kayla's nerves had started to settle a bit, though a lingering unease remained, a subtle sense that something was off but not quite tangible. The knock on the door interrupted their conversation, and Kayla glanced up, startled. Deja, ever calm, stood up with a confident smile and opened the door. A group of older girls stood in the doorway, their presence immediately commanding attention. Tasha, the leader, flashed a wide smile as she stepped into the room, her eyes briefly scanning Kayla before landing on Deja. "Well, well, the new girl," Tasha said, her voice smooth and welcoming, but there was a sharpness beneath it. "How are you liking our little slice of the world here? It's all pretty great once you get the hang of it, but you've got to learn how to fit in, you know?" Kayla felt her pulse quicken under Tasha's gaze. The older girl's presence was powerful, magnetic, like she was used to being in control. Kayla shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to say, but Deja flashed her a quick, knowing look before looking back at Tasha. The glance was quick, almost like a signal, and then Deja gave a playful wink in Kayla's direction. Tasha stepped into the room further, her smile widening. "You should try our tradition," she said, her tone taking on a teasing edge. "The midnight hangout. It's where we all get together, share secrets, have fun. It's kind of our thing, you know? You'll fit right in." Kayla hesitated, a mix of curiosity and anxiety swirling inside her. She wasn't sure what to make of this invitation. There was something about the way Tasha spoke, something that made her feel both welcomed and uncertain at the same time. The group behind Tasha laughed, a sound that was too casual, too knowing, and Kayla felt like an outsider, watching them with a growing sense of discomfort. Yeah, I guess I'll go," Kayla said nervously, her voice barely above a whisper. The words left her mouth before she could think twice. Part of her wanted to fit in, to be part of the group, to feel accepted. But another part of her, the part that had been raised to question things, felt a subtle warning signal in the back of her mind. Tasha's eyes sparkled with amusement as she nodded, satisfied with Kayla's response. She turned toward her group, and they all shared a brief laugh, as if welcoming Kayla into something far bigger than herself. Kayla, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach, watched as they left the room, their laughter echoing in the hallway. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving her with the uneasy feeling that something had just shifted in her world. She glanced at Deja, who was now sitting on her bed with a satisfied smile, but there was something in her expression that Kayla couldn't quite decipher. Was this truly what she wanted? Or had she just stepped into something she wasn't ready for? As the sounds of the group faded into the distance, Kayla sat on the edge of the bed, her thoughts spinning. She had wanted to belong, to be part of something new. But now she wondered if she was making a choice she would regret later. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a few lamps casting shadows on the walls. Kayla sat at the edge of a large circle of girls, the low murmur of conversation filling the air. The table in the center was cluttered with bottles of soda, candy, and snacks, all arranged in a way that made the atmosphere feel casual, almost like a party. But there was an undertone of something more, something unspoken. The girls laughed and joked, their voices rising and falling in an easy rhythm, as if they had all known each other for years. Kayla, on the other hand, felt like an outsider, still unsure of her place in the group. Tasha, who had been at the center of the conversation, moved toward Kayla with a bottle in her hand, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She handed it to Kayla, her eyes gleaming with something that Kayla couldn't quite interpret. Kayla glanced at the bottle, its contents dark and mysterious, but her hand hesitated in the air, unsure. There was a part of her that felt uneasy, a small voice in her head that told her she shouldn't, that she didn't know these people well enough, that this wasn't the right choice. But the pressure to fit in, to be accepted, weighed on her. Tasha's smile widened, her voice soft but convincing. It was casual, as though she were offering a simple gesture of friendship. "It's just a little something special," Tasha said, her tone light and friendly. "Just to loosen up the mood." "You won't regret it." Kayla felt the weight of her decision. She looked down at the bottle, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. Her stomach churned slightly, but the thought of not joining in, of standing apart from the group, made her hesitate even more. After a long moment, she finally nodded, her voice barely audible. "Okay, I'll try it." Tasha's smile deepened, and she stepped back as Kayla took the bottle, unscrewing the cap slowly. The liquid inside swirled darkly, and as Kayla brought the bottle to her lips, the familiar taste of soda hit her tongue. But something was off. It wasn't quite the sweet, fizzy sensation she had expected. There was something else, a strange aftertaste that lingered longer than it should have. As she swallowed, the uneasy feeling in her stomach intensified. The laughter around her seemed distant, like she was hearing it from far away, and her thoughts began to race. Her heart pounded a little faster, and a wave of discomfort washed over her. She had done this to fit in, but now she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Her eyes shifted to the other girls in the circle, their faces bright and carefree. But all of a sudden, they seemed different, as if they were watching her too closely. Kayla's throat tightened, and she began to second-guess her decision. Had she made a mistake? Why was she so eager to be accepted? The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. She set the bottle down on the table, but the taste still clung to her tongue, and the weight of her choice hung over her like a cloud. The laughter and chatter continued, but Kayla couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed an invisible line, one she wasn't sure she wanted to be on. The house felt strangely familiar as Kayla stepped inside, the scent of home filling her lungs, the familiar hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the floorboards. All of it felt like a distant memory after the week spent at university. She had been counting down the days until she could return home, eager to see her parents again. But now that she was here, something felt off. There was a heaviness in the air that she couldn't shake, a weight pressing down on her chest, making it harder to breathe freely. Lena, her mother, was in the kitchen, her back turned as she hummed softly to herself while preparing dinner. The moment Kayla walked through the door, Lena turned, a smile forming on her face as she noticed her daughter standing there. But as she took in Kayla's appearance, the smile faltered, replaced by a look of concern. Kayla hadn't realized it, but she had been walking with her head down, shoulders hunched, as if trying to make herself smaller, to disappear. Her eyes avoided her mother's gaze, as if unwilling to meet the warmth and understanding that Lena so often offered. Lena's voice cut through the silence, filled with a soft concern that Kayla hadn't expected. "Something's not right, Kayla," Lena said gently, her tone laced with worry. "You've changed. You used to be so open, always sharing everything with me. But now, you're so quiet. What happened?" Kayla felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She knew the changes were visible, but she wasn't ready to face them, especially not with her mother. She forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's fine, Mom. Everything's fine," she replied, her voice sounding hollow, even to her own ears. She shrugged, hoping to brush off the weight of her mother's words, but inside, she was screaming. The lie felt too heavy, too wrong. Lena didn't buy it. She stared at Kayla, her gaze unwavering, searching for the truth behind the wall her daughter had built. Kayla could feel the weight of that stare, but she couldn't bring herself to hold it. Instead, she shifted her gaze downward, feeling exposed, like a book whose pages had been torn out, leaving the story incomplete. Kayla didn't speak again, and the silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Lena didn't push, but she didn't need to. The tension in the room spoke volumes, and as Kayla looked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that her mother knew something was wrong, even if she hadn't yet figured out what it was. The small, sterile office was quiet except for the soft rustling of papers and the low hum of the air conditioning. Lena and Tyrone sat across from the school counselor, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of concern and disbelief. The counselor, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on the tip of her nose, shuffled through a few notes before looking up at the couple. She had the calm demeanor of someone accustomed to uncomfortable conversations, but her expression was serious. "We've noticed that your daughter has been struggling recently," the counselor began, her voice steady but laced with concern. "She seems to be under the influence of older students. It's become quite problematic, and we're worried about the effect it's having on her." Lena's face went pale as she absorbed the words. She had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it out loud, from an authority figure, made it all too real. She glanced at Tyrone, her heart racing. "Are you serious?" Lena's voice was a whisper filled with shock. She shook her head, as if trying to deny the truth. "She's never been like this. Kayla has always been so strong, so independent. She's never let anyone influence her before." Tyrone, his jaw clenched, leaned forward in his seat. The anger and frustration that had been building up inside him for weeks finally started to spill out. "What do we do now? We can't just sit here and wait for things to get worse." His voice cracked with emotion, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The counselor looked at them both, her expression softening with sympathy. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew they had to act quickly. "I recommend that you speak with Kayla directly," the counselor suggested gently. "She might be struggling with pressures that she's not sharing with you. It's important to create an open space for her to talk. We can also offer support through counseling if needed." Lena nodded slowly, her mind reeling. She felt helpless, unsure of how to reach her daughter now that she seemed so far away. Tyrone's hand found hers, squeezing it in silent support, but both of them felt the same sense of dread. This wasn't how they had imagined their daughter's university experience, and the fear of what might happen next hung over them like a dark cloud. As the meeting continued, the words seemed to blur together. Lena and Tyrone sat in silence, processing the news, while the counselor outlined potential next steps. They knew they couldn't ignore this any longer, but the path ahead seemed uncertain and filled with more questions than answers. The evening had settled in, and the soft glow from the desk lamp in the corner of the room bathed Kayla's face in a warm light. She sat on her bed, her knees pulled to her chest, a quiet tension in the air around her. Deja sat at her desk, leaning back in the chair, her posture relaxed, but her eyes focused on Kayla, waiting for her to speak. The silence between them had stretched long enough that Kayla knew she could no longer hide the turmoil inside her. Kayla felt suffocated by the weight of everything that had been happening. The decisions she had made, the people she had tried to befriend, and the parts of herself she had started to lose in the process. All of it swirled in her mind like a storm she couldn't calm. Her hands fidgeted in her lap as she took a deep breath, the words escaping her before she could stop them. "I can't do this anymore," Kayla whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I can't be one of you. I feel like I'm losing myself." Deja didn't respond immediately. Her expression hardened as she looked over at Kayla, her lips curling into a thin line. She had known this moment was coming, but she wasn't prepared for the weight of it. She had played her part, had worked hard to bring Kayla into the fold. But now, with Kayla's words hanging in the air, she realized just how far they had drifted apart. "You don't understand," Deja finally said, her voice flat, almost cold. "You can't leave. You think you can just walk away, but we're all in this together now. This is your life now. There's no getting out." Kayla's heart raced as she absorbed Deja's words, but something in her snapped. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The realization that she had changed, that she wasn't the same person who had walked into this room weeks ago. She had let herself be drawn into something she didn't want, something that wasn't her. The tears she had been holding back finally fell, sliding down her cheeks as she turned to face Deja. "But I don't want to be like this," Kayla choked out, her voice thick with emotion. I want to be myself, not who you want me to be. Deja's gaze softened for a moment, but it was fleeting. She didn't understand. Not fully. She had been a part of this world for so long, this group, this way of life that had defined her. For Kayla to want out, it felt like a betrayal. Yet beneath the surface, she could see the pain in Kayla's eyes, the internal struggle that had become impossible to ignore. Kayla wiped her tears quickly, not wanting to seem weak, but the reality of the situation hit her harder than she expected. The walls she had built between herself and her true feelings were crumbling, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could pretend to be part of something she didn't believe in. The last day at the university had arrived, and Kayla stood at the edge of the campus, her eyes scanning the familiar buildings that had once seemed so intimidating, but now felt like a bittersweet reminder of everything she had gone through. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden light over the university grounds, and there was a quiet sense of finality in the air. The hustle and bustle of students seemed to fade into the background as she stood there, lost in her thoughts. Her parents had arrived early in the afternoon, and after all the farewells, the goodbye hugs, and the promises to stay in touch, they now sat across from her at a small cafe just outside the campus. Lena's eyes shone with pride, but there was a softness to them that revealed the worry she had carried for months. Tyrone, as always, had an air of quiet strength, though the lines of concern were more evident now than they had been when he first dropped Kayla off. Kayla shifted in her seat, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. Her mind raced with the words she had rehearsed so many times, but now that the moment was here, they felt heavier than she had expected. She hadn't fully prepared herself for how much this conversation would mean, but as she looked at her parents, two people who had always believed in her, who had supported her unconditionally, she knew this was the right moment. I've been through a lot here, Kayla began, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to steady it. And I want to apologize for everything. I lost myself in trying to fit in. I let other people change me. But I understand now. I need to be myself, no matter what. Her words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, there was only silence. Kayla couldn't look them in the eye, the weight of her confession pressing down on her chest. She had expected her parents to be disappointed, perhaps even angry, but as she finally dared to glance up, she saw only warmth and understanding in their eyes. Lena reached across the table, her hand resting gently on Kayla's. "You're strong, Kayla," she said, her voice filled with pride. "We're so proud of you for recognizing what's important. It's never easy to find yourself, but you've done it. You've grown, and we couldn't be prouder." Tyrone nodded, his gaze steady and sincere. "We've learned that it's important to be here for you, to listen to you, and to protect you when you need it. You've always been our pride, Kayla, and that hasn't changed." A tear slipped down Kayla's cheek, but it wasn't one of sadness. It was a tear of relief, of release. She had carried so much weight, so much guilt for so long, and now it was finally being lifted. She reached out and took her mother's hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm ready to face the world as me," she whispered, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within her. As she looked at her parents, she knew that no matter what came next, she wasn't alone. The living room was warm and quiet, the soft glow of the evening sun spilling through the windows, casting long shadows on the walls. Kayla sat with her parents on the couch, the room filled with a sense of calm as they flipped through the pages of the photo album. The pictures of Kayla's graduation day lay before them, her cap and gown looking almost foreign to her now, a symbol of everything she had been through. The smiles on her face in the photos reflected the pride and excitement of the moment. But now, in this quiet space, they seemed like a distant memory, something she had to grow into, rather than something she had simply achieved. Lena's fingers gently traced the edge of the photo, her expression soft as she looked at her daughter. Tyrone sat beside her, his arm resting comfortably around her shoulders, the two of them silently sharing in the pride they had for Kayla. The journey had been long, and there had been moments of doubt. But now, with the album open before them, it all felt worth it. Kayla leaned back into the cushions, a soft smile playing on her lips as she gazed at the pictures, the weight of the past months settling into her bones. It hadn't been easy, the decisions, the changes, the struggle to find herself. But now, as she looked at the person she had become, she felt a sense of peace. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She looked at her parents, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be," she said with a quiet chuckle, her voice carrying the weight of her realization. "The most important thing was not to lose myself in it all." Lena nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She reached for Kayla's hand, squeezing it gently. "That's the heart of it, sweetie. Family, love, and support. That's what really matters. Everything else falls into place when you have those things." Tyrone smiled, his expression proud yet tender. He sat back a little, taking in the moment, knowing that this was a new chapter for their family. "We've learned that being there for each other is the most important thing we can do. No matter what, we're here for you, Kayla." The room fell into a peaceful silence as they sat together, the photos in front of them a testament to the journey they had all taken. Kayla felt a weight lift from her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she truly felt at home, not just in her family's arms, but in herself.